But taking a look at some of our top stories now is Emma James for tonight's Media Watch. It's good to see you, Emma. And of course, we have been covering Emmanuel Macron's visit to Calais, where he's trying to tackle the migrant crisis. He says he doesn't want another migrant camp springing up in the north of France. But how has that visit been received?
Yes, well, this has been a topic of conversation for quite some time now, not least because Emmanuel Macron stated very clearly last summer that he didn't want to have any men or women living on the streets or in the woods by the end of last year. And of course, that has really prompted some people to criticise the fact that he has failed to live up to that. And this was the cover of the most recent copy of L'Obs magazine, a weekly news magazine here in France, and they have the headline there, "Welcome to the country of human rights," because there's a lot of criticism too of how far Emmanuel Macron is proposing going and making immigration laws so much tougher here in France. Now, this magazine has pages of analysis and debate, all under the heading of a French hypocrisy. What is interesting to note, though, is that they actually talk about on their website the fact that he could be worse than the right-wing President Nicolas Sarkozy. They've spoken to an immigration specialist, Patrick Weil, who says that Macron is basically the opposite of Sarkozy. He speaks sweetly, but in terms of action, he's actually a dagger on the ground, whereas Nicolas Sarkozy was rather fond of harsh words and less so in action. Now, interesting, there has been a lot of controversy about that front page of L'Obs, the government themselves saying it just doesn't reflect reality, and also very unhappy that it does draw comparisons immediately visually to the concentration camps of World War II. There's criticism too because, of course, Emmanuel Macron ran very much on a centrist platform, and this cartoon from CAC really nodding to that because Christophe Castanet, the spokesperson for the government, is standing next to Emmanuel Macron in this cartoon saying, "Just so I know, we will do something for the left at some point," because the political left here in France really out in the cold at the moment with the collapse of the socialists. However, some of Emmanuel Macron's allies are also employing some harsh words for the president. There's been an open letter penned and published in Le Monde today in which they say, "Your politics contradict the humanism that you preach." Now, among those who've signed up to it, a gentleman by the name of Jean Pisani-Ferry, who actually was the director for the programme and ideas of Emmanuel Macron's presidential campaign. So criticism really coming in from all corners there.
OK, and it's not just French journalists who are talking about this today, is it, across the channel? Because, of course, Britain is very much implicated in this whole story. These are people who want to reach the UK, and Emmanuel Macron will be meeting the British Prime Minister Theresa May on Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of people wondering exactly how much Emmanuel Macron is going to use the issue of migrants as leverage when it comes to talking about Brexit. And a lot of the newspapers seem to be really casting him in a rather suspicious pose. The Guardian using this photograph where he looks decidedly Machiavellian. He's got an evil plan in mind there, I think. And also the Times tweeting this, President Macron will exploit his growing international stature to press Theresa May this week to open Britain's borders to migrants stuck in Calais. That language there really very suspicious of quite how far he's going to try to really force Theresa May's hand, because everybody knows she wants a good trade deal, and obviously he wants the UK to take more of these migrants who are currently in Calais. And they are talking about changing the Le Touquet agreement decided in 2003, which is all about where the UK's border is. Lots of things on the cards for that meeting on Thursday. Now, on LBC, which is a London radio station, the former leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage, asked his listeners, would you support a Brexit trade deal if it means accepting more migrants from Calais? Well, just looking at some of the replies here, the answer is definitely a resounding no. Somebody there saying, I'd rather not have a trade deal than be blackmailed by the EU puppet Emmanuel Macron.
Goodness me. Strong feelings there.
Absolutely.
And Macron's talking mostly about unaccompanied children, isn't he? Which is something the British did promise to do and then changed.
Absolutely. And I think one of the problems that we had there was that when the photographs were published of these unaccompanied minors arriving in the UK, because they looked quite mature, everyone and a lot of the tabloid newspapers jumped on the idea that these weren't really children. And so there's been a lot of criticism of that, and lots of people online too talking about the fact that let's be fooled again, those people weren't children. Now, I can't verify the ages of those people who crossed the channel. But certainly a lot of people very concerned about this in the UK. This gentleman saying Macron has got Theresa May exactly where he wants her in relation to a trade deal. She's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't. Interestingly, Marine Le Pen, who is, you might imagine, probably the least EU-minded person out there, leader of the National Front here in France, of course, she was talking about this yesterday, about his visit to Calais, saying the problem of Calais can't be resolved in Calais, nor can it be solved in London or Paris. It has to be done in Brussels, which is an interesting take. Yes, absolutely. There are two stories, though, in the British press today that I think really show you what a terrible human lottery this is. Asylum seekers who end up in Calais looking to start a new life. Now, this story in The Guardian talks about a 15-year-old Afghani boy by the name of Abdullah Dilsouz. The photograph here is his older cousin who was with him when he died. He was trying to board a lorry to get across the channel and was crushed under the wheels. Now, his cousin saw it happen and he was devastated by it. When he saw the condition of the body afterwards, he passed out immediately. And apparently Abdullah Dilsouz was one of 3 people killed last month trying to make that dangerous crossing. And it's worth noting that he had the right to live in the United Kingdom. It's just that he'd run out of money having got from Afghanistan to Calais, so he had no money to get across the channel. And it really is a great tragedy that it is just the fact that there's no safe way to cross that means he lost his life.
Got all the way to Calais just to be killed on the roads there. That is really sad, and one of a lot of sad stories, I imagine. Emma, thank you very much indeed. Emma James there with MediaWatch.